The Healthcare Security Cast is sponsored by 3D Network Technology. Reliability is our core value. Visit www.3dnetworktechnology.com. And by Genetec, delivering security strategies for healthcare. Visit Genetec, that's GENETEC.com. And by the Change Execution Group. Visit 360lifetransformations.com.
Welcome to the Healthcare Security Cast, the podcast dedicated to healthcare security, safety, and emergency management. If you are involved with a healthcare security program or desire to be, this podcast is for you. Join the conversation as we discuss the issues that matter to healthcare security professionals while leveraging the expertise of healthcare security thought leaders and experts in personal development. And now, here's your host, Brian Hamilton.
Welcome to the Healthcare Security Cast for Tuesday, December the 8th. I'm joined today by Mark Abernathy. Mark, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to have you on. And I'm going to start off the way I always like to. I want to learn a little bit about you, so I'll start off by asking, who is Mark Abernathy?
Well, my name's Mark Abernathy, and I live in Cedar Falls, Iowa. I'm employed by the Western Home Communities. We're a long-term care facility. I am their Director of Safety and Transportation. I have a wife and 5 children, a couple of dogs and some horses, and live in a rural section of Northeast Iowa.
Excellent. And you talked a little bit about what you're doing now. Can you walk us through your career path and just kind of explain how you got into healthcare security?
Sure. I had a law enforcement career that spanned roughly 14 years, and just decided it was time for a change and to slow down a little bit. I had some friends that were in the long-term care field and approached them about the possibility of starting a safety and security program, and that's kind of how I ended up at the Western Home.
Okay, so it was so when you got started, it was a brand new position?
Yeah, it was. The timing of my position, I actually came on board the Western Home as their Director of Transportation, and it was about the same time that CMS, the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services, was developing what they called the final rule, emergency preparedness. A lot of that was transferred over from what I was doing as an officer when I was with the police department, and safety security related items, and it just kind of fell in my lap and evolved from there.
Excellent. Now, one thing I wanted to kind of talk about is mentorship. Now, I'm sure you've mentioned some people who were helpful to you and some people who kind of had some experience in the long-term care. Who are some of the individuals that stick out as mentors for you, especially during that transition? But, if you want to talk about it as well, even during your policing career.
I was trying to think of that list yesterday, and it's such a long list. I still maintain a very close relationship with law enforcement officials at the state level or the federal level, and cherish those relationships that I built over the years. When I transitioned into the long-term care component, I became involved in IHSS, which is a wonderful organization geared towards the safety and security issues that affect the health industry. And through IHSS, I met Martin Green, who is a common friend of ours. And I approached Martin when we had the convention in Chicago, which was probably 4 or 5 years ago now, and introduced myself to him, and we hit it off right away. And I asked him, how many people in this room are actually in the long-term care field? And I was surprised, really not that many people, and so that became a goal of ours, to bring awareness to the long-term care industry and, see if we could get more people involved in safety and security issues in this field.
And I know one thing too, you talk about that being a goal as far as getting more people in the long-term care field involved. I know you and Martin have been a part of the special interest groups through IAHSS. Do you want to talk a little bit about that and what that experience has been like?
Well, I think we're just kind of cutting our teeth on some of these issues, but for the long-term care field, we don't have most of these organizations don't have the ability to have a full-time security staff or even a contracted security staff, so my concerns were right away, how do we bring awareness to these issues because, the issues that are affecting the larger hospitals, they're affecting us as well, but we don't have the training, we don't have the staff to deal with those issues. So what are we going to do to address that? So we just kind of dug in and just trying to figure out how to change that, how to bring awareness to the table, if you will.
Let's shift focus to that point. You talk about security awareness. So in any healthcare environment, security awareness is an important factor. How do you cultivate security awareness in your organization?
Well, you have to get people excited about it. It's not always an issue. It's usually a knee-jerk reaction in this industry. Active shooter doesn't become important until there's been an active shooter incident. We're always after the fact. So how do we bring it to the forefront? How do we raise awareness every day? How do we get people motivated in doing that? And in the long-term care field, the security people are everybody. It's the director of nursing, it's the administrator, it's the maintenance person, it's the person that drives people to medical appointments. It's all hands on deck. So it's kind of a non-traditional approach for at least my facility anyway, and many other long-term care. You have to get everybody involved, from the person that's cooking the meals to the person that's mowing the yard.
Perfect. Now, is there anything in particular that you do? Is it something that you do with staff orientations? Is there a lot of in-service training that you do to really get people engaged and I guess really educate them as to what security awareness means for them?
Well, like I said, the emergency preparedness rule really couldn't have happened at a better time. Medicare came on board and said, we need to have a plan. We want the plan, we're going to provide you the skeleton. This is what we kind of want the plans to look like. Now you take it and go with it. So, we were obligated to do something that we should have been doing all along. And so, we came up with this emergency preparedness rule. What are we going to do in the event of man-made disasters or a natural disaster? How are we going to react? So we have these policies set forth. So we're able to introduce those during orientations now and say, here's our plan, review the plan, and we're going to train on this plan often. So, it allowed us to bring these new people in on the ground level and say, here it is, we're going to do it. So it's coming.
Okay, perfect. Well, let's actually stay with that. So you alluded to the CMS rule there, and there's a number of rule elements, and they were something that you had to adjust to early on, like you said. What were some of the steps that you took to ensure the adequate preparation was taking place?
Well, you have to do a little research. The rule is basically, it's 4 elements. It's the risk assessment, which is what is going to happen to you, what could happen to you in your area, and man-made events, shootings and stuff like that can happen everywhere. But tornadoes and hurricanes and the weather-related events, it's geographically, situational. So you have to figure out what could happen to me in my area and come up with that. That's the risk assessment. And then from there, you got to have a communication plan. In the event that something like this happens, how are you going to get the message out, not only amongst your coworkers, but to your residents and to your residents' family members? How are you going to communicate that in the event of a disaster? You lose power, you lose the ability to pick up the cell phone or the internet. You kind of have to come up with that plan, and then of course your policies, are they written based on your risk assessment? Do they flow along with that assessment? And then the training portion of it, policy doesn't do you any good if you don't drill on it. So, and how can you drill on it and encourage people to want to do it? How can you make it fun?
Absolutely. Now I want to sorry to kind of jump all over the place here, but I want to talk a little bit about your career some more. Now, I guess it was about, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but it was about 4 years ago when you came over from law enforcement to the long-term care environment.
I switched out of law enforcement in 2013 and came to long-term care. So about 7 years now.
Okay, so I'm a bit off there. Okay, now what changes did you have to adjust to, and how did your past experience really benefit what you're doing now?
It's a much different lifestyle. It's a much different pace, a much better pace. Slow down a little bit. It's more compassionate care than what maybe law enforcement has dealt with. The things that I learned as an officer, translated nicely. The trainings for working active shooter trainings, or an event, a tornado or a flood that comes through the community. I mean, as first responders, we were on the front lines with that. So a lot of people in this industry would have played a much different role. I was able to take what I learned on the street and from my training and just walk it right across the board to this area. So it was a nice transition, and I was surprised what people didn't know that I was able to bring, just things that you just take it for granted. You don't know what you don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can echo some of the sentiments there. I think Martin can kind of share your experience. And I worked with Martin for a year and a half, in a long-term care environment. So you definitely do see a kind of shift in the pace that you have. It almost kind of forces you to slow down in some ways, which, there's definitely a lot of benefit to that. I guess I'm going to also ask you a little bit about the organization that you're working for. What's kind of the history with the Western Homes communities?
The Western Home Community, we're located in Cedar Falls, Iowa, which is in the northeast portion of the state. We've been around since 1911. In 1911, it was called the Western Old People's Home, and it's just progressed over the years. And we have campuses across northeast Iowa now. We have a population base of probably around 1,000 residents. We offer everything from independent living to skilled nursing, memory support units. We're kind of a one-stop shop, everything under one roof. So
Excellent. And you spoke about risk assessments. Another important element of your strategy is the tabletop exercises. How are you leveraging drills and tabletop exercises in your facility?
The part of the CMS regulation is they want you to do a tabletop exercise per year and a community supported drill per year. That's just not enough. I mean, it's great that we can do that, but we should be drilling on those monthly, in my opinion. And how do you do so to make them fun? They really are not bad to put together. It doesn't take as much time as you would think to put together a tabletop exercise. And how do you get people involved? So we just kind of play on that. And again, we try not to do it as a knee-jerk reaction. I'd much rather do an active shooter drill prior to an event that makes CNN, instead of coming in a day after and say, okay, I guess we got to do that. Just staying proactive. We mix it up. When we're going into the spring, we would focus on weather, because here in the Midwest, we know in the spring we're going to have severe storms. We know we're going to have tornadoes. So maybe in January, February, there's still snow on the ground. We're thinking ahead. This is coming down the chute. We don't want to do a drill after we've had a tornado that wiped out the community. So we just make it fun. We just, you can do them in small groups, 10 or 12 people. You can do them by the coffee pot. You just do a couple minute drill and hand out note cards and just pick people's brains, just get their input. And then we have them look at our policies and tell us how can we make them better. Give us your input. What do you like? What don't you like? How can we make it better for everybody?
Excellent. Now, through your experience and the requirements of your current role, you've been able to develop a strong partnership with the Cedar Falls Police Department. How has this partnership impacted your operations?
Well, a lot of great friends out there in law enforcement, and they'll be my friends for life. And it definitely helps that I was a part of an agency in the same town that I'm working in now, because I still know everybody. I have a very personal relationships with them. But the great thing about the CMS final rule is it forced people to get out in their community, to tap into resources that have been there to make your job easier. Why wouldn't you want to reach out to the police or to your local emergency management and develop that bond, because they have resources that you don't have. It's an ability for you to share your knowledge with them, reaching out to other long-term care facilities. Don't look at them as a competition. Look at them as a friend. They're in the same field doing the same job. Why not share the same resources with them? So that's been the best part about that CMS rule is it's forced people to look at the things that are already right at their doorstep.
Now, as well, through the pandemic, obviously we're doing a lot more a lot more things like, well, like we're doing right now, having to do things virtually. Have you been able to leverage that and really kind of build on those partnerships as well during this time?
Yeah, a lot of Zoom meetings. What's the new normal, and with the pandemic, my role as a safety person here has changed as well. Safety now is not only building safety, but it's the safety of your coworkers. So I get to look at purchasing PPE and stuff now. That's part of my role, and it's just it's the safety and security is much more than locking doors. So it's taken on a whole new element for sure.
Yeah, and just diving into that a little bit deeper, how has the pandemic really impacted your operations, especially early on when we didn't have a lot of reliable information in the beginning?
Well, the long-term care field is always going to be, we have a vulnerable population for this pandemic. There's lot of concerns about people in this age group that don't have the immunity that maybe younger people would. So, how can we protect our residents, keep them safe without restricting all of their freedoms so they're still living a fulfilling lifestyle? So it's been a challenge. We do what we can to keep people safe, and we'll always err on the side of caution. And you don't want to upset family members because they can't see their loved ones, but you want to keep everybody alive and well. Residents as well as your employees. So you take whatever precautions you need to do, and just people need to understand. This is a serious issue that we're dealing with now, and the numbers aren't going the direction that we would hope they would. They're pretty high right now, and we're just coming off the Thanksgiving break here in the United States, and I don't think anybody knows what that's going to look like yet. So just preparing for the worst and hoping for the best.
Now, obviously, as we talk about this, 2020 has been a very challenging year for a lot of folks, especially in the healthcare field. What can you say has you've learned from this year? What has 2020 taught you so far?
Boy, just to not give up. The healthcare field has taken a beating, and the employees are tired. It's everybody wants it to go away, but don't give up hope. Don't become complacent. I think the wearing of PPE and stuff like that. Don't take it for granted. Wash your hands. Don't touch your face. It took a pandemic for us to realize the things that we probably should have been doing all along. Basic hygiene. Stay home if you're sick. Keep yourself safe as well as your neighbors.
Now, one thing you touched on earlier was being involved with IAHSS. I know you've done some presentations. I believe you've done some webinars. You've been involved with the special interest group with Mr. Green, who we mentioned earlier. What are some of the things that we can expect to see from you in the future?
More of the same. I think this long-term care field, again, it's just such a great organization, and what a great tool to have it at your fingertips. To spread the word. More people in the long-term care field need to be involved with this organization, and there's many good organizations out there. But again, we need to be recruiting the nursing home administrators, the director of nurses, the maintenance people, the people that are cooking in the kitchen. We need to recruit as many of those people as we can into this organization, bring awareness to elopements, missing residents, the disasters that can affect the nursing homes, the active shooters. Heaven forbid we'd have something like that in our field, but you have to prepare for the worst. So just more awareness. We don't plan on giving up on getting the message out there and saying, hey, if it can affect the hospital in your city, it can affect the nursing home in mine.
Absolutely. Now, is there anything that I haven't asked you yet that you'd like to discuss?
Well, I can't think of anything. It's an honor to be able to sit here with you today and to bring awareness to these issues. And again, the long-term care field is no different than any other field. We need to be out there. We need to be driving this message home on safety and security and what that looks like in this industry, because we're dealing with a population base that's depending on us.
Now, one thing too that's kind of off topic, but I want to get your thoughts on this. What are some of the things that you're doing to unwind? Right now, I know there's a lot of attention being paid to mental health. We're talking about Zoom fatigue. People are on so many Zoom meetings. It's having a negative effect on some people as well. What does Mark Abernathy do to just kind of disconnect and lower those stress levels?
Well, I live on an acreage, which helps multiple reasons. You know, we don't have people right next door. We don't have to worry about neighbors that are close, so we're able to socially distance from that. It's calming for us. My wife and I like to get out in the grass and landscape and work with our horses and just take in some of the country air. I always mark off time for myself, do things that bring joy to my life. I'm into outdoor activities. I like to hike. I like to get outside. So it's important you got to put that on the front burner. You got to take care of yourself, because if you're not in good health mentally or physically, you're not any good to anybody else.
Right. And you're the first guest that I'm going to do this with, but I want to do something that kind of is also a little bit off track, or kind of outside of the topic that we've been discussing. But could you give us a movie or a book recommendation, or both, even if you have a couple?
Caught me off blank. I mean, I watch all the classics. You got me. You got me, Brian. You caught me off guard. I do like to read. I read as much as I can. I never read as a child, but I'm trying to make up for it now. And I am a movie buff. Get on Rotten Tomatoes and see what the review is, and then tell them they're wrong. I watched a movie the other day, and it got very poor reviews. And I'm like, well, that was one of the best movies I've seen all for a long time. But
you know what? It's funny. We have a couple of similarities there. Like I'm the same way. As a kid, I didn't read it all. I think there wasn't a single book report where I actually read the book fully. I just, I would read a couple of the highlights and try to get through that way. Or I made sure that somebody else in my class read the same book as me, and I could find out what happened from them. But now, you can see the book collection behind me. I'm more of an avid reader now. That's kind of something that evolved in my adult years. It definitely wasn't something when I was in school. I don't think, like I said, I don't think I read one book fully until I had finished high school, at least.
I've got a YouTube addiction now. I'll have to come clean on that. I watch a lot of YouTube videos, and I live my life through other people, watch them sail around the world, or watch them hike, or, travel. A lot of travel stuff. It's nice to be able to get out of the house without leaving the living room sometimes,
Oh, absolutely. And Rotten Tomatoes too. I have to say I'm with you on that one. I use Rotten Tomatoes a lot if I'm going to invest a little bit of time in watching a movie. I always want to see what they've rated it on there as well before I dedicate that time. Now, just as we're wrapping up, do you have a closing message for the Healthcare Security Cast community?
Don't give up. We're all in it for the long haul. We're putting in tremendous amount of hours. It's easy to get beat down. Just take care of yourself. Take care of your family. Remember your mission. Don't become complacent and take things for granted. Stay alert, but most importantly, just stay healthy.
Excellent. And what are the best ways to connect with you?
I can be reached through the IHSS website, or my email, mark.abernathy@westernhome.org. That's probably the best way.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you very much for taking the time, Mark, and I appreciate your time, and I appreciate you entertaining the unrelated questions as well.
Sorry, I didn't give you a better movie review, but.
And this concludes another episode of the Healthcare Security Cast. Thank you for tuning in. Join the Healthcare Security Cast community. To join, text START to 647-372-2042. Again, that's text START to 647-372-2042. Follow the Healthcare Security Cast on LinkedIn and Facebook, and join the Healthcare Security Cast community groups on both platforms as well. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. And of course, you can always connect with me on social media. I'm the only Brian, B-R-I-N-E, Hamilton, on any of these platforms. For any of these links, visit my website, Brian, B-R-I-N-E, Hamilton.com. That's BrianHamilton.com. Thanks again for joining us. Tune in again next week when we have a new guest and a new topic. Until then, take care and stay safe.